At least 25 Palestinians have died and hundreds have been injured during protests on the border between the Gaza Strip and Israel. Local officials say they were shot and killed by Israeli forces. They were protesting the opening of the United States' new embassy in Jerusalem, due to take place in an hour. President Trump's controversial decision to recognise Jerusalem as Israel's capital has angered Palestinians who seek part of the city as their own future capital. The move's also attracted international criticism. Our Middle East correspondent Yelan Nell reports.
Another deadly day on the Gaza border with Israel. Palestinians confronting Israeli soldiers who say they opened fire to stop anyone crossing the perimeter fence. Some protesters here are calling for a march to Jerusalem. This holy and disputed city is at the very heart of the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Both sides want it as their capital. And for decades, most of the world agreed its status should be decided between them in peace talks. The US is the first to move its embassy, but already others say they'll follow.
It's a great thing for Israel that the President of the United States did what he promised, and many presidents before him promised to move to Jerusalem.
For now, the new embassy will be just a few rooms inside the consulate offices that were already here. It'll take years before a new building goes up. But it's the change taking place right now that has huge symbolic significance. That's why Israelis are delighted and Palestinians are furious. This date is always a time of protest for Palestinians. They remember how in fighting in 1948, hundreds of thousands of people lost their homes on land that became part of Israel. This year's demonstrations are also aimed at Washington.
It will be for the embassy. Gaza will rise up along with the West Bank. Everyone, the children, the boys, the women, no one will stay home.
Already, President Trump's daughter and son-in-law have arrived in Israel for the embassy opening. But the White House's idea of a new peace plan looks more unrealistic than ever. Palestinians say the US isn't an honest broker in the peace process and have cut off official ties. Along with the big celebrations here, there are rising tensions.
Well, in a moment we'll speak to Tom Bateman, who's in Jerusalem. But first, let's turn back to Yelan. She's in Ramallah in the West Bank. A serious escalation of events now.
That's right. Yes, here in Ramallah there are clashes taking place right now as well. The day began peacefully in the centre of the city, where everyone gathered for a march. Then they began to head towards the Kalandia checkpoint. That's manned by Israeli soldiers, and it is the route, of course, to Jerusalem, which is blocked to most of the people who live here. But as they arrived at the checkpoint, already there were youngsters who were throwing stones at the Israeli soldiers, and Israeli soldiers responding, firing a lot of tear gas, and shots could be heard as well. The Israeli military put one extra brigade in the West Bank, anticipating unrest today, and it's also put 2 brigades right down there on the Gaza border, because it had expected that really crowds of hundreds of people might try to break through this border fence. This is the culmination of 6 weeks of protests that have been taking place at 5 different sites along the Israel-Gaza border, and there had always been an anticipation that this could lead to a lot more violence, and that is certainly turning out to be the case.
Yelan, thank you. Well, our correspondent Tom Bateman is in Jerusalem. Clearly calm there ahead of the opening, but what response to the violence that we're seeing outside?
Well, if ever there was a vision of 2 distinct realities when it comes to this conflict, it is here today, because as that news comes through from Gaza, people here are just an hour away from really a mood of celebration as Israelis embrace and give a warm welcome to the US decision to move its embassy here to Jerusalem. Now, we got a bit of a clue over the weekend as to the US motivations in terms of President Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital, when the US ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, said that what part of this move was intended to do was to remove leverage from the Palestinians when it comes to negotiations. He said that the president had felt that the Palestinians had had for too long an effective veto over the official recognition of Israel's capital, as far as the Americans are concerned, being here in Jerusalem. But it continues to be vehemently opposed by the Palestinians, not just in those protests, but also in terms of international diplomacy. There's been a complete breakdown between the internationally recognized Palestinian leadership and the US administration. And one senior Palestinian official has accused the US of being complicit in international law violations and accused President Trump of spreading anarchy.
Tom, thank you. Tom Bateman there in Jerusalem. Yilan Nell, thank you.